Humanity's understanding of the universe has expanded tremendously since 1922. A prominent anti-gravity researcher, Dr. Amy Espridge, died in mysterious circumstances after showing interest in UFOs and disclosure. A former Russian Navy admiral reveals that he has seen USOs, that's unidentified submersible objects, flying into and out of the ocean in the North Atlantic. Another Starship upper stage has been destroyed, this time before a routine static fire test. An accident or sabotage? John Ramirez, a veteran CIA officer, attended a meeting of government officials at a sensitive compartment information facility in 2022. He deferred to channeling when it comes to understanding UFOs and extraterrestrials and what's coming in 2027. These stories and more on Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the June 21st edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. We've had quite an eventful week this past week, and certainly a lot of stories to cover. And I want to begin with a new website. Well, it's not so new. It's only been around for several months. I guess you would consider that new. And it concerns something called the GLF Station. Now, it posts a lot of channeled material from different organizations, galactic entities. So it's something that has intrigued me. It's very uplifting information. It's really all about going within. I mean, they do have a little bit of a take on contemporary geopolitical and exopolitical events, but a lot of it is all about going within, connecting with one's heart center, and that is really the focus. So the intriguing thing about this website is that it uses roughly 8 to 10 different channelers for putting out a consistent amount of information. So the information does vary a little bit, and of course, because we have multiple channels, it means that the quality you would expect varies a little bit too. Now, the creator of this website, his name is David Nicholas, and I did get to talk to him. We did a kind of phone conversation. I just wanted to get to know more about him and see if he's someone that I would feel would be a good fit for a interview. So I found out some intriguing things about him. He spent time in a Buddhist monastery in Indochina, has had multiple contacts, spiritual experiences, and he's a very enlightened soul in my opinion. And certainly I don't believe that we would agree on everything when it comes to the exopolitical topic, but I definitely felt a buzz after our conversation, and felt this high. When you talk with very enlightened souls, there's a kind of energy they give off, and you feel this high afterwards. So that kind of made me feel that, okay, this guy, he's really connected to something important, and the channelings on the GFL station include some from him. They're from approximately 10 different individuals whose info is similar in focus and orientation. And so from what I've learned so far, the GFL station is a sincere attempt to raise planetary consciousness. Now, first of all, there's a little bit of controversy over this alien image. Now, why they chose that, I believe it may be because some of the I haven't come across any beings that they channel other than human-looking beings or Arcturians or Andromedans who do have a different look. To me, this image of you would say it's a kind of a golden version of a grey extraterrestrial. Now, people have spoken about enlightened grey races, so I guess we shouldn't be surprised that someone would choose as a image for their website something that's modeled after grey extraterrestrial, because it's very recognizable. It's something that people from around the world will immediately identify as an alien, as extraterrestrial related, as opposed to having a human-looking being, and someone could think, oh, it's a website for skiing in the Alps or something. Someone blonde, long hair, Nordic in a tight-fitting suit. Someone might think, well, maybe that's for something else. So I don't. This is something that people have pointed out again and again and say, oh, I don't get a good vibe about it. Well, I think that fair enough. It's referring to a kind of enlightened form of Zeta grey extraterrestrial, and people have talked about this, that there are these enlightened greys. GFL, what does that stand for? I think a lot of people would assume it's the Galactic Federation of Light, and there's a kind of like a lot of controversy about whether or not that organization does exist, if it's a real organization or not. My view is that we have on the one hand the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and the claim is that the Galactic Federation of Light is kind of like a rip-off of the Galactic Federation of Worlds, trying to imitate it, but it's a non-existent organization. Well, I disagree with that view insofar as the Galactic Federation of Worlds is a military-oriented extraterrestrial organization that operates largely at the third, fourth, and fifth densities. Now, there is another organization which has also been operating on Earth for some time, for many decades. Or actually, you could go back all the way to ancient Egypt to hear accounts of the Confederation of Planets. And that is a more spiritual organization that operates at the kind of fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth densities. And whereas the Galactic Federation of Worlds works a lot with governments and militaries, the Confederation of Planets primarily works with humans at an individual level, because their philosophy is that the rising tide lifts all boats. Kind of like if you raise the consciousness of enough individuals, then the planetary consciousness will rise, and that will deal with any problems like militarism and kind of like unethical genetic experiments. That'll all be dealt with if you raise the planetary consciousness, as opposed to going in and working with governments and militaries and corporations and making deals. That gets very messy, and it kind of like can compromise you. So I think that the Galactic Federation of Light may in fact be modeled on the Confederation of Planets. So I certainly think that this is something that very well exists, but the naming may be the issue here. All right, so now what I'm going to do is go to the next story, and this concerns this particular graphic. Okay, this is post from X that I reposted from Jason Wild, and he pointed out that in 1922, it was the predominant view at the time was that the entire universe was just the Milky Way galaxy. That's really the extent of the scientific knowledge back in 1922, and that the galaxy stretched 100,000 light years across, which is, I mean, that is an enormous number. And back in 1922, scientists thought that that was the universe. That was it. That was the whole show. But now we know that the observable universe is 93 billion light years wide, filled with 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars. And that's just the part we can see. Why? Because space itself is expanding faster than light, warping time, distance, and everything we thought we understood. In just 100 years, our universe didn't grow. It was always this big. We just finally opened our eyes. And so there you have the graphic of what was thought to be the universe back in 1922 and the known universe today, which stretches 93 billion light years and contains 2 trillion galaxies. I mean, that is a lot. So this is where I thought of something that was very intriguing, and that is, well, if we consider the universe, it has 2 trillion galaxies, and we then think of the Hermetic principle as above, so below, as within, so without, then we could actually, using that principle, estimate how big the universe is. The known, I mean, you have the known universe, 2 trillion galaxies, but how big is the unknown universe? Well, we could speculate that, well, if the Hermetic principle applies, and a lot of people have said it, that it does apply. And I believe Nassim Haramein, who's a physicist who has worked at the micro and the macro level, he very much takes on the kind of like the fractal, I believe that would be the right term for it, the fractal nature of the universe. That would be another way of saying as above, so below, that as you look at the macro level of our universe, it corresponds exactly with the micro level. And he's done work on atoms and the nucleus of atoms and the proton, and he's done the kind of like mathematical correlations between the distance between the proton and the electron and the weight and the hidden mass and so forth. And he's come to the remarkable conclusion that the macro mirrors the micro. So if we accept this information, and I think it is accurate, then I think we could actually give a fairly accurate estimate of the unknown universe, that if the human body has 40 trillion cells, and that was one of the things that Nassim Haramein pointed out in his work, that our solar system and humans tend to be at the midpoint of this kind of the extremes of both at the micro level and at the macro level. We happen to be in the middle. So if the human body has 40 trillion cells, and we know that the known universe has 2 trillion galaxies, then I think we probably wouldn't be that far off if we were to estimate that the unknown universe has approximately 38 trillion galaxies. So that would mean that the entire universe, both the known and the unknown, would be 40 trillion galaxies approximately, which is the number of cells in our body. And that assumes the Hermetic principle. It assumes that Nassim Haramein is correct. And he's provided a lot of mathematical evidence and he's been looking at this from the perspective of what's known in quantum physics and so forth, which I think upholds the Hermetic principle. So yeah, I think we can actually make a informed guess about how big the unknown universe is. Okay, so this was something that was based on a paper that was written by investigative journalist Michael Schellenberger, and he talked about the deceased anti-gravity researcher Amy Espridge. I believe that was Dr. Amy Espridge, that was submitted to the congressional record when he appeared before the Congress, and that I believe was 2023. And in this report, I just want to read this out to you. This is the entry in this paper. I think it was about 120 pages, submitted by Michael Schellenberger, and is now part of the congressional record in the United States. So this is what he had to say about Dr. Amy Espridge. The 35-year-old scientist and co-founder of the Institute for Exotic Science in Huntsville dies in Huntsville, Alabama. She was a retired UK intelligence officer. Retired UK intelligence officer Frank Milburn claims she was targeted with directed energy weapons and murdered by a private aerospace company in the US because she was involved in the UAP conversation and was working on advanced propulsion. In 2020, Espridge stated she was planning to present novel foundational work regarding anti-gravity but needed approval from NASA. In 2018, Espridge and her father, Richard Espridge, gave a talk on behalf of their company, Holocron Engineering, a gravity modification R&D company, in which they discuss historical and current means of anti-gravity experiments and modern black projects allegedly developing triangle anti-gravity craft like TR-3B. Espridge's colleague, Dick Reeves, was also involved with the Institute. Her brothers, Michael Espridge and Matt Espridge, were not. And so you have some links here that Michael Schellenberger provided. But I think that this is very significant that you had this retired UK intelligence officer, Frank Milburn, saying with some, I guess, conviction that she was killed by a directed energy weapon that was targeted on her by a private aerospace company in the US because she was involved in the UFO issue and was working on exotic anti-gravity propulsion systems. And I believe that for someone like this to be murdered, working with NASA, setting up her own company, working on anti-gravity, she must have got really close, probably even more than getting really close. I think that they must have mastered the principle, because that's my understanding of what happens typically in anything to do with anti-gravity research, anti-gravity propulsion systems, free energy, any kind of breakthrough technology in those fields, including holographic healing and so forth. Those things will get you killed if you actually succeed in developing that technology. And the way it happens often is that there's a carrots and a stick approach. They get approached by someone saying, hey, we want to buy you out. We love your research. We're going to give you $100 million to buy you out. And you, as the inventor, might consider that's not worth it, that you can make a lot more, or that you're going to do it for the good of humanity, and you say no. And then the stick is applied, and that often involves murdering someone. Very unfortunate. That is just the way things have been happening in these alternative scientific fields. All right, so I wanted to play something here, which is what this was taken from the cockpit of a commercial airliner leaving Iran. And what it shows is the missile launches from Iran towards Israel. And this has been going on now for, I think, 5-6 days. The Israelis and the Iranians are fighting a pretty heated war. The Iranians are using ballistic missiles. The Israelis are using their air force, which is delivering a lot of bombs and dropping them on various targets. So, all wars lead to a lot of death and destruction, and this is no exception. But you can see the kind of scale of what is happening here, that there's dozens of missiles that were launched at the same time by Iran. And so my kind of question is well, what are the extraterrestrials doing as they're watching all of this? Do they kind of throw up their hands in exasperation and say, oh well, the humans still haven't gotten it, they were on the verge of some major breakthroughs, they by and large have maintained a kind of like a status quo, haven't descended into a third world war, and now we see something that has the potential to expand into a major regional war, if not a world war. Now, I look at these kind of conflicts, I try to go beyond the geopolitics and look at the exopolitical aspect of this. And I think there are a number of exopolitical aspects to this conflict. One is that there's been a lot of references to an attempt by the deep state to create a Gog and Magog end times scenario using biblical prophecies and passages concerning these mythical entities. Well, actually, they weren't mythical. Gog and Magog are described in the book of Ezekiel and in the book of Revelations as this grouping of nations that would attack Israel just before the coming of the Messiah. And so here we have Iran. Iran is defending itself against Israel. Let's just say that the attack was launched by Israel. But nevertheless, now you have this war that can very easily expand. Now, could this be used to justify a kind of Gog and Magog end times war? Certainly when you watch the missile barrage and what's happening in Israel at the moment, I mean, major cities like Tel Aviv are coming under attack. Dozens and dozens of ballistic missiles are crashing, destroying things. From the perspective of the Israelis and probably from the Iranians, this is a kind of a major war. Now, if we look at this from the exopolitical perspective, you could make the case that this is a kind of Gog and Magog end times war, or we're getting into that. And with the Gog and Magog, that hypothesized that this you would have the arrival or the return of the Messiah, and that the Messiah would bring about peace after defeating the enemy and those kinds of prophecies. And so you have that both in the Islamic tradition with the return of the Mahdi, you have that in the Christian religion with the return of Isa or Jesus, Christian Zionists, for example, and you also have that in the Jewish tradition with the return of the Messiah. And all of those, you have different kind of scenarios in each of those religious traditions, but they're all predicated on this kind of like Gog and Magog end times war, and then the return of the Messiah. And so this is where we get really into the exopolitical element. And a couple of people have been saying that they've gotten from their sources that in the next 2 weeks it's possible. Now, how likely this is, I don't know, but it is possible that we could experience a kind of alien salvation event where aliens show up and there would be a kind of like this end times messianic salvation kind of scenario unfolding. So that's something that has been raised as a possibility. Now, it's not to say it's a prediction that's going to happen. It's just a possibility that this is going to happen. That in the next 2 weeks, we may well experience a contrived alien salvation event, and this has been going on for some time. The preparations for this, so I've done a webinar on it. I've talked about it a lot. The alien salvation event. That this was something that has been prepared, but it's been put on the back burner up until recently. And so now the question we all have to ask is, well, could this Iranian and Israeli war be used as the justification for going ahead with this end times scenario where you have each of the major religious traditions in that part of the world believing that the Messiah has returned, or the Mahdi has returned, or the Christ has returned, and could that be used as a means for having the deep state or negative extraterrestrials or some unknown grouping stage a fake alien salvation event? We will see whether that does happen. All right, so here is something that was posted by Russ Coltart, an investigative journalist from Australia. Okay, so let's see what he has to say here. It's just a coincidence that all the usual suspects, now a former NASA official, Joe Guthines, are saying UFOs were used as a cover by governments to hide a lot of things. Mr. Guthines suggests it's up to those suggesting an non-human intelligence presence to prove it. Yet multiple first-hand witnesses have done exactly that and testified to Congress. The proof is there to be investigated. None so blind as those who will not see. This is the last gasp of the national security state trying to shut down the inevitable. All right, so this is he's just responding to a kind of new line of debunking or skepticism that has been launched by the Pentagon and the Arrow office, and you got NASA officials writing with this, saying that, well, the government actually contrived the UFO issue because really it was trying to hide the existence of these classified stealth programs or other advanced aerospace programs. And so they thought it would be an easy thing to do to just make people believe that what they were seeing were alien extraterrestrial technologies, whereas the truth was that these were just some kind of advanced aerospace vehicle being tested by the military, by corporations, and so forth. So just another way of dismissing the UFO issue. And Russ Coltart, I think, quite correctly, is identifying that this is only delaying the inevitable. Now, however, how long will official UFO disclosure be delayed by this new strategy by the deep state to dismiss UFO reports and whistleblower testimonies as covers for classified aerospace programs? Yeah, that's a big issue. I mean, it could be that this is used to delay official disclosure for years to come. Some people talk about 2027 as being when we are finally going to have the extraterrestrials revealing themselves. Others talk about the 2030s, which is when the Starship missions to Mars will be delivering humans to Mars, and then they're going to be discovering evidence of ancient civilizations there. So that would be the early 2030s, and that's when disclosure is going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, we're all guessing when it could happen, official UFO disclosure, but it's always important to point out that even though this is very disappointing, I mean, I've been in this field now for, 24 years. I gave up a university career as a professor, thinking at the time that this would open up, and here we are 24 years later for me anyway, and nothing's happened. But I mean, if I have to wait another 5 years or 10 years, so be it. But the kind of encouraging element in all of this is that even though official disclosure is going to be delayed, that all my sources, or most of my sources, are pointing to kind of like this disclosure or contact happening more and more at an individual level, that there's going to be an organic disclosure process as more and more people. Just think of the number of people at the moment we know of that have had experiences concerning extraterrestrial life and have been talking about it, writing books. Imagine that number increasing by a factor of 10. And then imagine that number increasing again by a factor of 10. I think that's what's going to be happening over the next 5-10 years, that the number of contactees, people who have had direct face-to-face contact with extraterrestrials or are in communication with extraterrestrials, that's going to increase tremendously. I believe that the number of star seeds on planet Earth is approximately 250 million. That's about I think 2.5% of the entire population are star seeds, and many of those, if not most of those, are part of something called the Galactic Envoy program. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I think that even though official disclosure is going to be delayed 5-10 years, unofficial disclosure, that is contact at an individual level, is going to expand tremendously over the next 5 to 10 years. So there's some good that's going to come out of this. Right, here's an interview I did with Darius J. Wright, who truly is fascinating. He has had thousands of out-of-body experiences, and he talks about how those out-of-body experiences are a way of us being able to explore the world and the other planets in our solar system, and in fact the galaxy, that you can actually leave your body in a controlled out-of-body experience, that this is something that you can train yourself to do and go explore. And what you see corresponds closely with what you would physically see if you were out there. So at this point, the terminology gets to be a little fuzzy here, because I personally, the way I would differentiate between a person having an out-of-body experience, which is just a controlled, the way Darius Wright describes it, he describes it as a controlled near-death experience. So, people have near-death experiences in a car accident. Something has happened, and they're on the verge of death, and there's a white light, they go into it, and all of these things happen, and they come back. Well, an out-of-body experience is a controlled near-death experience, according to Darius Wright. And what you see there is very much a approximation, or let's just say a reflection of physicality. What we would see, that if you, for example, watching this. Now, if you were to do an out-of-body experience and go out and rise out into the sky out there, you would see the Earth pretty much as it is, but you can fly because you're out of body, and you can explore and see things. And what you see are pretty much things that are really happening in the physicality. Robert Monroe talked about this in his books, Out of Body Experience. Now, and Darius, he talks about the part of us that leaves the body. He refers to that as the soul body. Now, when it comes to the soul body that Darius Wright talks about, that pretty much corresponds with the etheric body that Barbara Brennan, who wrote a number of books, one of them was Hands of Light. She was a healer, and I came across her work 20 years ago. Oh, no, more than that, 25 years ago. She talked about the etheric body as being very much the kind of soul body, where as a healer you would work with the etheric body to heal a person, and that's where healing happens. And I believe that this is where you have this kind of out of body experience happening as well. That the etheric body is very closely integrated with the physical body. And so when you leave your physical body in your etheric body, or your soul body, using Darius's terminology, you see things out there that are very close to what you would see physically if you were able to be out there and see those things. Now, that's different. The way Barbara Brennan described it, that's different to the astral body, which is like the dream body. So when you go and have a dream or something, the dream is a concoction of your subconscious desires, and it has very little to do with a shared reality. So in our physical body and in our etheric body, we all have this shared reality that we go into and we can report on and reflect on. But the astral body is more a product of our dreams, our subconscious desires. So that's how I distinguish between the two. So I think that this whole out-of-body experience as something that can be developed through training and exercise, I think that's a wonderful tool for people like us that want to find out about what is happening around us, what is happening with extraterrestrials. And Darius has had thousands of experiences over the years. I think he was 16 years old when he began his first out-of-body experiences. And he's encountered all sorts of beings. He's traveled to different locations. And I think this is something that we can all do. Kind of similar to how remote viewing is done. People can remote view by transferring their consciousness to a different place using protocols from remote viewing, while with the out-of-body experience, you can actually take your body there, your dream body or your etheric body there, to experience this kind of shared reality in the etheric realm. Okay, so here's an update that JP put out concerning his experiences in Japan and him actually being taken involuntarily onto a space ark. Well, this is a short update JP put out on his channel. He has a YouTube channel, and there I have the link in the description to this video. So if you want to find out what JP's channel is, just click the link corresponding to this story in the description, and it'll take you to his YouTube channel, and you can watch his update about the space ark and things that were happening to him in Japan. Now, the kind of like really interesting aspect of what JP revealed was that we did an update where he talked about being taken to a Pacific space ark that was under the control of the deep state. And at the same time, NASA released a satellite image of Caldas Novas in Brazil, which is where JP says there is another space ark buried. And the way JP has described these space arks is that they are huge. They are several aircraft carrier sizes in length, and that they are an oval shape. So here in Brazil, you can see this place, Caldas Novas. There's something very, very unusual underneath here, that this is a protrusion. It's not a cavity. It's not a meteor impact. It's an actual protrusion rising up into the air. So there is something underneath there. Now, according to JP, this ark is under the control of the White Hats. So it got me thinking that, okay, so when it comes to space arks, and you got this struggle between black hats, white hats, the Earth Alliance versus the Cabal, that one group might get their hands on a space ark and try and activate it and do things in there, and according to JP, the black hats got control of this Pacific space ark and were activating it with evil intent. Well, in doing so, I suspect that the White Hats, the Earth Alliance, took that as a kind of almost like a karmic permission to do something to activate the Caldas Novas space ark and kind of put that information out into the public arena. So I suspect that if the Black Hats move forward with their plans to activate the Pacific space ark, which they appear at the moment to be in control of, that if they were to do that, then this space ark here in Caldas Novas, that it would be activated by the White Hats, and possibly we could imagine it just floating up, which is what JP has said in past updates. So fascinating. Okay, so here is a video presentation by Brad Johnson, and he has developed an ancient metaphysical system to predict events that are coming in 2025 to 2029, and he calls it the Anoint system. It's something that I thought is definitely worth taking a look at. Anyone that makes predictions, it's always good to kind of look at those predictions and catalog those and be aware of what was predicted in case we have something that works for us, because I do believe that the future is something that can be predicted. And so here is something that Brad Johnson has developed called the Anoint system, based on some ancient numerology from a variety of different traditions. I think he uses a lot of Chinese numerology and astrology for his Anoint system, and I think some Vedic numerology, astrology as well. But nevertheless, it's quite a sophisticated system, and he kind of stands by predictions for 2025, so that's always interesting, and going all the way up to 2029. So definitely take a look at Brad Johnson's Ancient Metaphysical Systems predictions for 2025 to 2029. Okay, so here is a post, a video from Dr. Andrea Martin, and in this video, Dr. Martin, she is talking about the different galactic rogue factions and Ika's update on Israel and Iran. So Ika is her extraterrestrial spouse from the Pleiades. According to Dr. Martin, she is part of the Galactic Envoy program. There are there are many, possibly as many as 250 million galactic envoys. The exact number is not clear because these galactic envoys are at different stages of awakening. Some, like Dr. Martin, have awakened. She has been interviewing approximately 10 people that she says are galactic envoys, and that they are awake, or that they are aware of their extraterrestrial partners that are up on the ships. That typically the way it operates is that you have couples, but it could be families, it could be siblings, friends, and so forth, that choose to incarnate on Earth, or choose to come to be part of this Galactic Federation of Worlds operation to cleanse the Earth, or to free the Earth from these oppressive extraterrestrial forces. Typically, one will incarnate on Earth or walk in, as Dr. Martin says, she's a walk-in, while their partner will be on the ships or continue to work with the Galactics. According to her, Ika is part of this Nordic extraterrestrial faction that has reached agreements with the US Air Force or Space Force, and is currently stationed at Cheyenne Mountain. And I know that that is real, that is happening, because JP has met with many of these Nordic extraterrestrials who have that are actually have infiltrated. Infiltrated may be the wrong word. That are here as a result of agreements between the Air Force and the Space Force and these extraterrestrial organizations. So she describes different galactic factions, and that there was a rogue faction in the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and that rogue faction has been dealt with. And so this is something she discussed in this video. Now, I did do an interview with Dr. Martin, which will come out next week, and I'll talk about that shortly. But she also talks about Israel, Iran, and again, this kind of she also discusses the possibility that this could be leveraged to bring about the false flag alien salvation event. And so she also talked about that as a possibility. Okay, so so that the Galactic Federation of Worlds has cleansed itself of compromised operatives. So she, and I think what makes her information, I think, very realistic, is that the Galactic Federation of Worlds is not some kind of like idealized organization where all the members are on the same page and they're all happy campers with the agendas of their leaders and so forth. That the Galactic Federation has differences and factions very similar to Earth. In fact, there's a mirror happening here, that the Earth is a kind of microcosm of the macro, and so the Galactic Federation is a mirror of that. So you have your factions in the Galactic Federation, and some of these factions have compromised operatives, and she was saying that these were identified and dealt with through some kind of, let's just say, judicial action or arrests and so forth. Right, well, here is a story from a Russian Navy admiral who reveals what he saw coming, flying into and out of the North Atlantic Ocean. So It's a short video clip. Let me do it without his voice. Okay, so here we go. I have seen with my own eyes very luminous objects that were maneuvering in the night. They have plunged into the water and took off out of the water. That's what I saw. They didn't attack us. They were only maneuvering. What was it? I can't tell you. But that's what we saw, myself and the crew, during one of our missions in the North Atlantic Ocean during a very dark night. Okay, so there you have a Russian admiral saying that he and his crew during one night saw USOs, unidentified submersible objects, flying into and out of the ocean. So what could this be? Well, I have interviewed people, both Jean-Charles Moyen and JP have visited underwater civilizations in the Bermuda Triangle area with advanced aerospace technologies. So there are civilizations at the bottom of the oceans. We know there's one in the kind of Bermuda Triangle area, and that they have advanced aerospace technology, so they can fly into and out of the ocean exactly as this Russian Navy Admiral Vladimir Chernovin says that he and his crew witnessed. And I think this is something that is definitely coming out. More and more people, both in the United States, people that were senior officials or have been doing this. In Russia, this has been going on since the 1990s. In the United States, I mean, you had the Disclosure Project with Stephen Greer, and you had a number of whistleblowers coming forward in the year 2001 who talked about it, but not so many that were at a very senior level. But we've seen since 2017 in the United States more people coming forward at a senior level. You know, for example, you have Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who is very outspoken now on UFOs and also USOs, because he's certainly aware of the literature discussing these things. Well, the Russians have been doing this for longer. They began in the 1990s with the collapse of the Soviet Union. There was a lot of openness. A lot of people were talking about what they knew concerning UFOs. So I'm not surprised. Okay, so here is the update I did with JP that came out on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Patreon, and he discusses a space ark takeover plot where he was abducted from a hotel in Japan, and he was taken to a space ark in the Pacific Ocean that was under the control of approximately 30 deep state operatives clad in all black, no insignia, with masks, and they were pressuring him and a Nordic extraterrestrial to activate the space ark. That this is something that the deep state knows, that there are people that can activate space arks. JP is one. Jean-Charles Moyen is another one that can activate space arks. And there are other people as well that we have heard of that can activate space arks or have traveled inside of them. Pardon me. Take a drink. So these people can activate space arks, and the deep state is seeking such people and using whatever means they have, whether it's abductions, threats, to take them to these space arks to activate them. Now, when JP first began talking about the space arks, we talked about the crew of the space arks, that the crews are incarnated amongst humanity. So out of that 250 million or so star seeds that are here on the Earth, some of them, a percentage of them, are the crews of these space arts. So the deep state knows this, and they're trying to map out who's connected to who so that they can find out who they can abduct and take to a particular space art. So they decided, or they thought, that JP's genetics were suitable for activating this space art in the Pacific Ocean. Now, thankfully, JP was able to escape that because he had the help of a Nordic extraterrestrial that was also being forced to help with the deep state operatives. But importantly, the space art has a consciousness, an organic consciousness, that helped them by doing things like shocking the deep state operatives and opening doorways and passages for JP and the Nordic to escape. So a fascinating experience that JP had. Okay, so here is news about the upper stage of a Starship was destroyed in a test stand explosion. So you have the Starship booster rocket, which would go underneath the actual Starship, and the booster rocket returns to Earth, and the Starship would go on to its mission into Earth orbit, or to eventually the Moon, and eventually after that to Mars. So this was destroyed in a test stand explosion. So this is like this is the third in a row that a Starship has been destroyed in an explosion. The previous two times happened while the Starship was actually fired up and it was going up into space. But in this case, it was in a test stand explosion. So this is something that should not have happened. And so that raises the real question, a very serious question. Was this simply an accident, or is it sabotage involved at aiming, or that's involved at delaying manned trips to the Moon and Mars, both of which can lead to extraterrestrial disclosure? So the Starship is what is going to be used for a possible moon landing under the Artemis program, but is certainly going to be used for the SpaceX manned missions to Mars that are going to start taking place in 2026. Now, I interviewed Dr. John Brandenburg a month ago, and he actually said that in his view, these Mars missions are going to be how they're going to move forward with extraterrestrial disclosure. Because when the Mars missions happen, then you're going to have people landing on Mars with SpaceX, and they're going to walk around and they're going to see plenty of evidence of an ancient civilization on the Mars surface. And that's when you'll have disclosure of ancient life, intelligent life on Mars, and that'll kind of like set the stage for further disclosures about extraterrestrial life being found on the Moon, and eventually they're visiting us on Earth. But that would all happen in the 2030s. So if this is the plan, by say, let's call it the white hats. I think Elon Musk has shown. Well, people consider Elon Musk to be a grey hat, and so let's just say that Elon Musk has shown that he does want to get to Mars as quickly as possible, and that would expedite this kind of disclosure. But if SpaceX missions are sabotaged, or Starship test firings and so forth are sabotaged, then that would push everything back. So we would have more and more delays on official disclosure. So this is the interview I did with Dr. Andrea Martin. It is now available on Patreon. So this is one of the benefits you get if you join Patreon. It's $7 a month. which is not much, but you get early access to all of my interviews and all of my commentaries. You get early access and you get no ads. And on YouTube and Rumble, you get a lot of ads. So for $7 a month, you get 12 or 13 videos that I put out every month for free. So this is a great way to support me in doing this work, and I really appreciate all of my Patreon subscribers. So yeah, just if you haven't subscribed yet, get over there, and you for $7 a month you get early access, you get ad free, and you get to support me. And I do thank all of my Patreon subscribers for their support. So in this interview with Dr. Martin, we talk about galactic envoys waking up, and this is really critically important, that we need to understand that when it comes to organizations like the Galactic Federation of Worlds, it's not about one person. That's false. That's something that some people are pushing, that it's all about one human representative who is talking with the Galactic Federation. In fact, there are many people talking with the Galactic Federation. There are many that are part of the Galactic Envoy program. So we talk about the Galactic Envoys in this interview. And as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Martin, who worked for 19 years as a professor at Worcester University, she has, for the last several years, been working with people that are galactic envoys that are associated with the Galactic Federation. So they're also going up on the ships. So so far, there are 3 people that I'm familiar with. Dr. Andrea Martin. There is another gal, Erica Amorina, who I have spoken to, and I'm going to release a book review of her book in another week, and we will eventually do an interview and I will release that. And there is a third galactic envoy, Michelle Porto-Fria, that I also plan to get in touch with and do an interview with. So that's 3 people out of 10 that Dr. Martin is working with. And so there are hundreds of thousands of galactic envoys that are waking up. So as I said, it's not about one person being the representative for the Galactic Federation. All of these envoys, they have people, loved ones, siblings, partners on the ships or part of the programs that the Galactic Federation of Worlds is associated with. And I totally agree with Dr. Martin here that it is important to get their stories out. That's the key. As more and more people start to share their stories of being a galactic envoy, then we're going to reach a critical mass. And I think that is going to help the kind of like awakening process happen, or the disclosure process happen at an organic level. So, yeah, I think this is very exciting to be working with Andrea Martin on this and interviewing and helping more of these galactic envoys come up. And, of course, you get the intel as well, such as what's been happening with the Galactic Federation operatives that were compromised in some way. So, and one of the things that she talks about in this interview that kind of like surprised me, I hadn't come across that before, because I was always persuaded because of some of the opinions of others that in order for humanity to graduate and join the galactic community, we had to get control of the deep state. We had to remove the deep state from power. And that's been a narrative that's been pushed by someone claiming to be a exclusively representing the Galactic Federation. That's not true. I mean, that's absolutely not true. We don't have to get rid of the deep state to be welcomed into the galactic community. In fact, according to Dr. Martin, we would fit right in as we are right now. That shocked me, that we would fit right in, as divided as we are, as compromised as we are by the deep state. The galactics up there are just as messed up. Now, of course, I'm talking not about galactic civilizations that operating at the 6th, 7th, 8th density. I mean, those that are part of the Confederation of Planets. But when we're talking about civilizations at the 3rd, 4th, and even 5th density, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, for example, that they have problems with the deep state as well. They have problems with infiltration and operatives, and so this was really a kind of bombshell for me to realize this. So yeah, that interview is on Patreon, so I get to watch it or wait for Monday. So here's an article that I thought was an excellent introduction to the different galactic organizations that we need to understand are operating at the moment. One is the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and the other is the Confederation of Planets. Now, this is an article that is on this website, Galactic Anthropology. It talks about the Confederation of Planets and the Korendi, and it builds on some of the information I've been putting out over the last few weeks about the Confederation of Planets and its differences with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. As what it does is it builds on some of the literature that describes the the Confederation of Planets. That the first mention of that was in the late 1950s by Gabriel Green. He was a contactee, and then he was followed by Robert Renault in the 1960s, who also talked about the Confederation of Planets as being a kind of pacifist organization. And then he talked about another organization. He described it as the Alliance, but today we would describe that or call that the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And he described it as being more interventionist and more military in orientation. And that both of these organizations, they had a common goal in helping a planet free itself of negative extraterrestrial influences. So they had a common goal, but they had very different methods for doing it. The Galactic Federation believed in intervention, help working with governments, militaries, to kind of get rid of the negative extraterrestrial influence, whereas the Confederation of Planets would work more with individuals to raise consciousness, and as you did that, the planetary consciousness would rise, and eventually the problems would disappear with the rising consciousness. So he talks about that, talks about the different groups, the Federation of Light, because there's different terms. Some people talk about the Galactic Federation of Light, and so that's another. Well, that I believe it's either an organization that's one and the same as the Confederation of Planets, or it's some kind of contrived organization to muddy the waters. Can the Galactic Federation of Light be both? I think it can. I mean, that's, we live in a world of smoke and mirrors. The intelligence community is always pulling the wool over our eyes, and the same thing goes at the galactic level. So I think you probably do have an organization. I mean, I think that the Galactic Federation of Worlds exists, as does the Confederation of Planets, and the Galactic Federation of Light, that can either be just another name for the Confederation of Planets, or it could be some kind of contrivance to fool people and to get them to go down some kind of military intelligence or a grey extraterrestrial dead end. That's possible as well. So it just means we need to be discerning, be aware of all organizations, and not be naive as to think that there's only one organization and that they're out there looking for our good. No, we need to be more nuanced. So this definitely is an article I recommend. It has lots of links in there, and Galactic Anthropology, I believe, .org. Yep, galacticanthropology.org. All right, so that's a website that you can visit, and I think there's a lot of other articles there that also build on some of this information. All right, so here is a tweet from Carb that I wanted to talk about. Carb is someone that he's working with his mother, Judith Lynn, who claims to be in contact or communications with extraterrestrials from the Pleiades, from Taygeta. And I believe Carb also is in communication with them. I'm not sure. And he shares quite a lot of information. Some of it I think is... And his mother share, I think, information that is very uplifting overall. But I thought this was kind of interesting, this post, that there is no bearded, loving male God who came to earth to bless us with his favor. That's a children's story from a more primitive time. And I would agree with that. I think that it's actually dangerous to think that there is just one kind of like bearded, loving male God who kind of like created humanity and we're his children. And here I'm talking about one of the Anunnaki, Enki or Ea, and there are certain narratives surrounding him as the father of humanity. And that is misleading. He played a role in the creation of this avatar body that we all possess. So no doubt he played a role in the creation of that. Now, whether he created it from scratch himself, using primitive hominids and using Anunnaki DNA, or whether he used already advanced hominids on the planet and dumbed them down, as some believe really happened, and there's evidence for that as well. Regardless of where you stand on that, he at best played a role in the genetic engineering of these avatar bodies or these skin suits that we all wear, but that within us is this eternal soul, and he is not the father of that. That is eternal. He is an immortal, which means that he, in his avatar body, lasts for hundreds of thousands, billions of years before that body, I know there's a process of rejuvenation that he undergoes with his physical body. And now he's reached the point where apparently he's immortal and the physical body doesn't have to rejuvenate. So that is very different to an eternal soul, which goes through a recycling process where we go in and out of many avatar bodies. Now, this is where I have to part company with Carb. He goes on to say, Galactic Federation is the only group who cared about us enough to stick around. Humans literally wouldn't exist without them. The dark forces on Earth don't have real power, only lies. They rely on human beliefs and actions. They want us to think we're victims and prisoners and that all ETs are evil. Okay, so I would agree with him there. But I disagree with him here strenuously, because the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and I'm not sure if he's talking about the Galactic Federation of Worlds or of Light, that is not the only group of extraterrestrials that have been around for some time. In fact, the literature referring to the Confederation of Planets goes back quite some time. As I said, the first story mentioning the Confederation of Planets was in the late 1950s, and that was from Gabriel Green. The Galactic Federation was mentioned in another book that appeared in the 1950s, and that was just a very brief mention to the Galactic Federation, and it was much later on that people began to talk about the Galactic Federation. But the literature supporting the existence of a confederation of planets which operates at the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th densities, that has been around for many decades. We can go, as I said, to the 50s and 60s with Gabriel Green, Bob Renault. There was also the Ra material from 1981 to 1984, where they talked about the Confederation of Planets helping humanity all the way back to ancient Egypt. So this information from CARB that the Galactic Federation is the only group who cared enough about us to stick around is not correct, that the Confederation of Planets has been around a long time. And the Galactic Federation has also been around for some time. Exactly how long, I don't know. But my point is that we have to accept that there are two major benevolent extraterrestrial organizations or groups that have been interacting with Earth for a long time and are trying to help us evolve and free ourselves of this alliance of dark forces. We're talking about, say, Draco Reptilians, Orion Greys, and the deep state Satanists doing all these terrible things on the planet. All right, so, and here we have a story concerning John Ramirez, a veteran CIA officer who served for 25 years, and he describes a meeting that he attended in 2022. And I thought it's very interesting what this meeting had to say. So this is retweeted from Anjali, who is someone that is using a typed statement from John Ramirez regarding some kind of an event in 2027. So let's see if I can read this for you. Okay. American government officials who have assisted the disclosure process behind the scenes in 2022 invited me to meet them in Washington, D.C. These officials requested anonymity, which I have honored. I can't say that they were not CIA. I can say that they were not CIA officers. So we're assuming they're from, say, the State Department, the Department of Energy, and so forth. During the course of the meeting, which was held in a SCIF, that's Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, one of the officials mentioned that the year 2027 has emerged in various social media venues. I was asked about my knowledge of that year. I acknowledged that 2027 seemed to loom large within the channeler and spiritual consciousness communities. I suggested that they research what Anjali Schultz and Chris Bledsoe have stated. I was pressed for my opinion. I stated that I deferred to the channelers. That's interesting. That a veteran CIA officer of 25 years who came across extraterrestrial-related information during his career, and after his career has kind of hinted at some of the things he experienced, but talking about the reality of the UFO phenomenon, that he was saying back in 2022 that he deferred to channelers. That's very interesting. I mentioned earlier on the website GLF Station, and that contained channeled information, and a lot of that channeled information, as far as I can tell, is of very high quality. Now, it talks a lot about upcoming events, and how accurate that is, I don't know. I haven't done a close analysis of the GFL station to comment, but I certainly have taken a close look at stuff like The Ra Material by Carla Ruckert, The Only Planet of Choice by Phyllis Schlemmer, Jane Roberts and the Seth Material. These are all high-quality channelings that I believe have a high degree of accuracy. So, and I mentioned earlier Brad Johnson as a channel, and I have interviewed him once, and I do plan to interview him again. So he also he follows a protocol, and that to me is very important, that channelers who are in communication with extraterrestrials or other beings, that they have some kind of protocol that they go through to ensure that no deceptive entity comes in and says, "Hey, I'm Sananda from the 11th dimension, and I'm here to introduce love and light in your life and to make you the emissary of the planet." Okay, nothing like that. It is, you have a protocol that essentially connects you with your higher self, the core consciousness of your being, or the I am that I am. I mean, people have their own protocol for doing it, but if you verbally state that and you perform certain actions, that prevents deceptive entities coming in. So people who are accurate channels do that. People who are just beginning and think that they are, special in some way, they're not. They don't do that, and they just like open up to anything, and any being can come in claiming to be anything, and that's deception. So channeling is a mixed bag, but there is a way of identifying quality channelers, and to be able to use their material to understand the big picture of what's going on. So let me go on. I referenced Lou Elizondo in 2022, stating that we should engage in a hobby for 5 years and all will come out by then. So again, referring to 2027 as the year, and this is something others have talked about, 2027 being a fundamental year for disclosure. And this was back in 2022. I stated my personal hope that the non-human being might make their presence known by then, and if they do, it behooved the American government to start disclosing everything it knows about the presence of non-humans and their technologies. Otherwise, disclosure is not on our terms and could result in an uncontrolled and unpredictable shock, which would be disastrous. Now, I find this very interesting because in 2022, I remember working very closely with Elena Danaan and her information about the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and she was very clear that by the year 2023, we would have disclosure. And she referenced Una from this confederation, the Galactic Confederation, and Una said that by 2023, 2024, we wouldn't recognize our planet. That's how much this extraterrestrial disclosure would change things. And that did not turn out to be correct. And I think it's very important that people are made accountable for their predictions. Elena Danaan made a prediction, 2022, that by 2023, 2024, disclosure would have happened. And it didn't. Now, here you have, around the same time, a government official, a former CIA operative, John Ramirez, saying that at the same time, when Elena Danaan was saying 2023, 2024, we would have full disclosure and the world will never be the same, your life will change forever and dramatically, that it was actually 2027 that was the year where there would be some kind of major change. So that, I think, is a very important thing to take note of. And I believe Chris Bledsoe has talked about this. And yes, Chris Bledsoe was mentioned, as well as Anjuli Schultz. And they are talking about 2027 being the year. And so far, it does look like that is going to be a very important year. Hopefully, it'll be when disclosure happens, but I've been around long enough now to know that predictions come and go, and often we are disappointed by them. But nevertheless, people will still make them. But I think 2027 is something that channelers are referring to. All right, so that takes me now to the webinar I'm doing next week on January 28. I'm doing that with two other individuals. I'm doing that with Sarah Breastman-Cosme and George Kavaslis. They will be part of a panel and they will participate in the Q&A. And this is going to be on the dilemma of a Star Trek future. This webinar has been delayed, I think it's 4 times now. It was originally going to be held on February 22nd of this year, but I was admitted to a hospital 2 days later and almost died. Now, exactly what that was about, I do believe I was poisoned. And I think, was this webinar, was there stuff to be discussed in this webinar that threatened the deep state? It is possible. And what's interesting is that not long after this, after I was attacked, actually pretty much around the same time, George Kavaslis also began to experience all kinds of attacks, psychic attacks and directed energy weapons attacks and so forth. And Sarah Breastman was also attacked. She was getting attacked online by certain people. So funny that we all attacked. Well, next week, next Saturday, finally we're going to get to do this long delayed webinar. So you can go to my website to get more information about that. We're going to talk about the dilemma of a Star Trek future and why a Star Trek future, even though the White Hats and the Earth Alliance want it and are trying to create it, and there are many benefits from having a Star Trek future, there are also some important negatives, and so that makes it more of a dilemma that we will explore in depth in this webinar. So that's it for the week in review for this week. I want to thank you for watching and being a part of this. Aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.